Hey y'all, welcome back to It's Not Just You, candid answers to burning questions from women in tech. Today we're going to be answering two questions. Between work and home, why does it feel like there's no room for my ambitions? And how can I stay grounded in my emotions in high stakes interactions? These are good ones. These come up so much with my clients. So I'm really, really excited to dive in deep into these today. So why we're here. It's really helpful to understand why we do the things that we do. So as always, I'm going to draw a line between here's how our socialization impacts our nervous system. Here are the feelings that we're going to have and the behaviors that are going to result that are completely predictable and make total sense. And then here's how we start to shift those once we see what's going on so that we can start creating the lives that we want and not keep living in these loops where we keep getting outcomes that we don't like. So I am Gretchen Diekenicker, founder and career coach at Unbound and Unbothered. Worked in tech for over 20 years before starting this. And that's what brings me here today. All right. So quick housekeeping things. I love a lively chat. Get that going. If you are watching on the live stream, but you want to come play with us here where you can enjoy the chat and engage with me, then I think it's on this side. Come join through that Zoom link and come join us here. If you're watching it later and I mentioned something and you're not sure where to find it, or I talk about Amy's going to drop a link or whatever, just go to my website at unboundandunbothered.com and everything will be findable there for the most part. So let me make sure I can see the chat. Perfect. All right. So question one, between work and home, why does it feel like there's no room for my ambitions? So let's start with the nervous system. So our brains prioritize safety and they want to minimize discomfort, and ambition is by definition uncomfortable. So we're always going to be running up against that no matter what else is at play. But because this question talks about between work and home, we know there's a lot more at play here, right? There's I have to be a good, right? Fill in the blank. I have to be a good parent, partner, leader, neighbor, sister, mother, whatever it is, right? And so that leads to overwhelm and can get us into a freeze response where we just feel like we don't know what direction to go in and we're just paralyzed in this spot. And what's going on when you're trying to solve for work and home and work and home and work and home is that your brain senses danger and it's constantly trying to solve for a variable that doesn't exist. Our brain thinks maybe there's this variable where work and home can be balanced and will never be just uncomfortable and everything will work out fine. And it's trying to solve for this variable all the time. Well, if I just did this, right? And that's exhausting in our brains to have our nervous system kind of running the show that way, because we are in this constant state of activation where the amygdala, which regulates our nervous system, is running the show and not our prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain that's responsible for reasoning, emotional regulation, and planning, the part of our brain that makes us human. There doesn't, when we get stuck between these two things and we're in a constant state of activation and we're not using the prefrontal cortex, then it feels like life is happening to us instead of us directing the sort of journey of our lives. So what eventually happens is we're just only able to focus on what's right in front of us, and we can't do that future planning. So that's part of what we really want to do is calm the nervous system, just understand what's going on. That's the most important takeaway probably from this answering this question today. So what role does our socialization play into it? Well, ambition isn't celebrated and validated like self-sacrifice are, particularly for people socialized as women, right? We don't get the there's not a bevy of movies out there that are like, she went to college and then she bought her own place and now she has this awesome career and travels the world, right? We don't get that story. Often something like that's actually used as a cautionary tale, right? Oh, the career girl who ended up the childless cat lady, right? That's sort of where it's explicit and implicit, and it comes in all of these different ways at us that ambition in women is not celebrated. So there's also this deeply ingrained belief that we have to earn the right to prioritize our ambitions, as if those don't just come with being a human, right? And Then there's the narrative of it's selfish. I should be grateful for what I have. I'm a terrible person that I want more. I have clients tell me this all the time. Like, but I have a great husband. I love my kids. My career's good. Like, I should just be happy with what I have. Like, I hear this so much. And part of it is just like you can be grateful for everything that you have and still want more. There's nothing inherently wrong with you. There's just that checklist, what I'm going to call in this little session, the patriarchal checklist in a heteronormative world, right? You get married, you have kids, you go to college, you get married, you have kids, you buy the house, da da da, right? And you do all those things and you think, oh, this is the life's list to make me happy. And then you get all the things and you're like, I thought this would feel differently, right? Because what wasn't on the checklist was like continuous growth and ambition, right? If we just added that to the checklist, I think there would be a little bit less guilt around this. So, and then socialize to put our own needs last, even when everyone else's needs are met. So I definitely have a like a subset of my clients who are like the empty nesters, who are like, I've never for the past 20 years considered what I want. It hasn't mattered. Like, it would be silly, right? And they're getting to reacquainted with themselves after 20 years of like, what do I like? What do I not like? What do I want? What do I not want? Right? Because we haven't been able to ask those questions of ourselves in so long, right? So, I mean, there's a reason that there's like a whole thing called the gray divorce, right? That's doubled since the 1990s. And this is the empty nesters, right? Because all of a sudden it's like, oh, when I start thinking about what I want for the next 30, 40, 50 years of my life, after my children are grown and out, like, it doesn't include this person that I built this family and did that chapter of my life with. So, what are the feelings that are coming in? The feelings that are going to come in from these belief systems, right, are a persistent feeling of not enough. So there's like this double whammy combo of like guilt that you're not doing enough for others and shame that you're not living up to your own potential. Like, that is absurd. That is absurd that we're actually feeling that, but I see it so much. Like, oh, there's more I could be doing, but like, even though I'm giving everything I have to someone else, now I'm going to make myself feel crappy that giving everything to everyone else, I'm not living up to my potential, right? Like, there shouldn't be any shame around that. There should be anger, right? And then there's the guilt that you're not satisfied with the life that you have, right? Frustration and resentment on what's standing in your way, right? Which often is the people that you love, right? Where you're like, well, if I could just get out from underneath pick up and drop off every day, maybe I would have time to go to Pilates, right? Or the idea that your ambitions are irresponsible or indulgent, that the things that you want, that the things that you secretly dream of but don't dare try to go after will somehow make you less responsible or less caring or somehow indulgent in a way that feels bad. So let's talk about why this makes total sense. So, of course, we put our needs on the back burner when we receive constant reinforcement that and validation for putting other people's needs ahead of our own, right? Of course, we overcommit to everyone else's goals, thinking that our time's just going to come later, that not right now, except that like we have to, later is when we pick, right? When our needs matter is when we decide that they matter and we make a plan to get them in there. Of course, we shrink away from dreaming and planning when we're just trying to get to the end of the day without letting anyone else down, right? That's when the amygdala is running the show and we're not engaging the prefrontal cortex. And of course, we avoid long-term planning when it feels like we're getting like shocked by like a live wire of like, we're selfish and ungrateful, right? It's like this little shame electric shock every time we consider wanting more, and then we shame ourselves and tell ourselves we're ungrateful or that we're selfish, right? Like, you can't get out of that. But that's the sort of thing, this live wire that's surrounding you. And to get to your dream, you have to keep running up against this shame and getting shocked. Like, of course you're not going to want to do it, right? Okay, so what do? The things that are going to happen, right, This is how we get stuck and stifled. This is how we get this narrative of being not enough. We're not doing enough. We're not giving enough. We're not being enough. The not enoughness will lead you to burnout. Talk to my clients about this. Like, it will absolutely lead you to burnout. And then resentment, right, also leads you to burnout and to like degraded, like relationships with the people that you love the most. So becoming a supporting character in your own narrative because you're so busy making sure that everyone else is on their way to getting their dreams. And the thing to remember here is this just is not a zero-sum game. And some of the tips that I'm going to give you in a second are really helpful here. We hide behind our daily routines to avoid the shame of wanting more and the discomfort of growth or going after our dreams. And then the long-term thing, if we don't sort this out, is that we risk internalizing the limiting beliefs about the feasibility of our ambitions. If we keep telling ourselves the same story, now it's not the right time, I'm not ready, this isn't, after like such and such thing happens, then I'll go for it, right? We start believing that narrative that our brain is giving us, right? Because if we believe now's not the right time, we're going to keep finding evidence for that. Right. So this is the one that, let me come back to that in a second. Okay. So the challenge, here's what we do, right? We're going to try some really powerful and statements to like give ourselves permission to be a full, whole human. So try something like, I can facilitate the realization of everybody's dreams and my own. I can prioritize myself and show up for the ones that I love. I can be grateful for everything I have and want more. Like, write that one down. There's no thing that's like, oh, there's just something. I have enough. I have all the things. And so I'm just not allowed to want more. It makes me a terrible person. Like, I can be grateful for everything I have and want more. So this is the piece where, like, if this is you, if this is where you feel stuck or stifled or at a crossroads, like, hire a coach. It doesn't have to be me, but this is something that a coach is going to create space. It's going to like give you the ability to think about what you want, to understand who you are in this moment, to understand how to make that happen, how to realize your dreams and not wait for everyone else's to be realized before you can have your things. They'll help you like keep your mind straight, right? You'll be able to set and maintain boundaries, like break down your goal into bite-sized pieces so it works within your schedule that's already really probably full, right? You can learn to say no. You can process the guilt and shame that's going to come up around having ambition, and it's going to shift your belief system about yourself. So use these and statements, but if it's possible for you, and this is where you are, hire a coach. This is what coaches do best, is get you from the place that you're stuck to well on your way to the place that you want to go. Okay. So question 2. Okay, awesome. All right. Okay. So how can I stay grounded in my emotions in high stakes interactions? So our nervous systems get so triggered in these situations, right? Like, what's going on? Well, we might get the fight response where we get defensive and go into the inner critic. We might have the flight response where we shut down or we avoid, right? We might have a freeze response where we're overwhelmed or we're indecisive or we're just like the words, we can't find them, we can't form them, they won't come out, right? Or we go into a fawn response where we say yes when we mean no and agree to things in that meeting where like everyone's assigning this thing to you and you're like, wait, but you can't speak up. So now it's yours, right? And the thing is that it's really hard to access the calm, rational part of your mind, right? When you are triggered by whatever response that you've got going on, because your body's getting flooded with the same adrenaline and cortisol that it would if you were like in physical danger. If someone were like, you saw a stranger in an alley in a dark night with a knife, like it's the same things, right? So we have to understand that our brain thinks that these meetings or these places where we are freezing up or shutting down or whatever's going on in these high stakes interactions, we have to understand our brain thinks it's danger and first calm that. And then we engage the prefrontal cortex and we decide how we want these kinds of meetings to go, how we want to show up. We'll focus on every single thing that's in our control. And so that's what I'm going to talk about towards the end. And I also have a workbook for this that I'll share. And if you're watching it on like a replay somewhere later, if you go to my website at unboundandunbothered.com, I think it's under like free guides or free workbooks or something. There's a spot you can find it on the website if you want to go get the workbook later. Okay, so why does this happen? Like, what's going on with our socialization? So we're conditioned to prioritize other people's needs, right, ahead of our own. So it would make sense that like we're going to worry about being likable in this situation. We're going to worry about other people being uncomfortable. We're going to worry about our own discomfort at making someone else uncomfortable by saying no, right? And then for any additional marginalized identity that you're living within, there may be this thing of like, I can't rock the boat. Like I'm barely here, right? Like I can't be the one to rock the boat in this situation. I just have to go along, right? And that's some fuckery there too, right? And so what happens is we disconnect from our own needs and we agree to things that are not in our interest, right? That work against us. And so what are we feeling when this is happening? We're feeling like frustration and anger, like with other people or with ourselves. We're feeling self-doubt and anxiety and insecurity. We're worried about being wrong. And so we're not speaking up unless we're 100% sure we know the answer, or we're worried about not being liked, right? And what would that do if people don't like me? Will I still be able to get things done? That'll be really scary, right? Your brain's giving you all of these signals, right? You will definitely start feeling some resentment if you keep saying yes when you mean no, right? As you see like Chad fail upward with factory level precision, right? While you're working your ass off and feeling taken advantage of. Or you might feel helpless that like, I know what I want to say. I just can't say it in the moment. And you might feel like your body is betraying you and that you don't have the power in the situation to do what you want to do. So how does this make total sense? Why does this make total sense? Well, of course you agree to things that you don't want to do when we're socialized to value cooperation over competition and humbleness over confidence. That makes total sense. Of course you worry about saying the wrong thing if you're held to a different standard than Chad, right? Of course you shut down because you're afraid if you speak up and it's not perfect, then you're going to be judged for being emotional or some other label that is assigned only to women, right? Like, what's the difference between emotional and passionate? Gender, right? Of course, you can't think straight when the blood in your brain has gone to your limbs because your brain thinks you're actually going to need to run from a lion, right? Like it senses like that it's like physical danger, and there's actually less blood in your brain in these moments when your nervous system is triggered. And of course you avoid when it doesn't feel safe to push back, right? When you're worried about what the outcome will be if you're not agreeable. And of course, then we're going to should, could, and would, and judge the hell of ourselves afterwards for not being able to stand up for ourselves in the moment, right? It's just a really rough cycle in this one. So what does this lead to? Well, you might develop a pattern of like dreading or avoiding high stakes interactions, and then that will reinforce your cycle of self-doubt and emotional reactivity, right? Or it becomes more and more difficult to communicate authentically or assertively. And then you end up with a bunch of unresolved issues, increased resentment, right? Or a feeling of being unheard or dismissed, right? And like breaking down, like what part of that can we influence, right? And then the worst outcome of this is that Chad gets all the credit and all the raises and all the promotions, and you get more work. That's the outcome we really, really, really want to avoid. Okay, so Amy already dropped the link for the folks that are on the thing, but there's a workbook, and I want to give you two things. I want to talk about what's in the workbook, But I also want to like, if you're feeling you're in that moment, right? I want you to do one of two things. Both of them will help you get back into your body, which is like if you are overly, if you feel your nervous system activated, you feel that heightened emotion, right? You want to get out of your head and get back into your body. And so there's two things that you can do. Like, particularly like if you're working remote and you go off camera, you can just remind yourself, like, come back into your body and remind yourself and tell yourself, I am safe or you are safe, right? It makes total sense that you would feel this way, right? Validate your feelings. Anyone in this situation would feel this way. It's totally valid, right? And just let that come, like get back into your body and let that come down. If you can't go off camera, and you can also just go like scream into a pillow. That was my favorite. Scream into a pillow, come right back. But some people don't, that doesn't work for them. The other is like just getting hyper aware of like, how do my feet feel touching the floor? How does my chair feel against my body? Like, how do my fingers feel on my keyboard? But just get back into your body. Just start noticing, right? Like, how does the waistband of my pants feel around my waist, right? How does my shirt feel against my shoulders? Like, just get back into your body and get out of that nervous system reaction so you can get that blood back into your brain and start being able to like solve the problem in real time instead of just shutting down. Okay. So what's in the workbook? In the workbook, it will step by step. What we want to do is we want to start with the outcome that we want, the one that we can control. So like I advocated for myself effectively, right? Or I asked for a raise, right? Whatever, but it has to be something that you can control. It can't be like I asked for a raise and I got it, because you don't have control over that other part, right? It can't be that I advocated for myself effectively and I got my way, right? Because we can't totally control that. But what we do is we start with the outcome that we want. The thing that's going to, when we walk out of the room and we're like, I owned that shit. I totally rocked that. That's what we want to like own, this part of it. And then we work with like, okay, so for that to happen, what would I need to do in the meeting and not do in the meeting to get that outcome? So like not get into my head, stay grounded in my body, listen instead of waiting to talk, right? Not shut down when it seems like it's not going my way, not say yes when I want to say no, right? All of those things, right? All the things that we want to do and not do. And then we have to figure out, how would I need to feel to be able to do those things? It might be calm. It might be confident. It might be neutral. It might be self-assured. There's so many different things. It might be motivated or excited. But the one that I think is the most valuable in these high stakes interactions that keep you in the moment, that keep you grounded, keep you from getting lost in everything that's going on, is curiosity. Curiosity is so powerful because it gives your brain something to do besides freaking the F out. So that's what I really recommend for that. So, and then we have to decide the last part of this workbook. We have to decide, what do I need to believe so that I can feel that way, right? It could be something like, I'm just here to gather information, right? And that might make me feel curious. And that'll keep me engaged. I'll listen instead of waiting to speak. I'll gather like all of the things and I will get that outcome that I want, right? Or like, now is the perfect time to ask for a raise, right? Because we can't, there is no good or bad time. There's just a time to ask for a raise, right? And then you go through this whole process, right? And if you go into a conversation like that with curiosity, like, I wonder what I would need to do if I get told no. What are the exact things I need to do? What does that mean? What does that mean that I need to be more assertive? What would that look like? Right? That level of curiosity is going to create outcomes where you stay empowered in these situations. So, and then the last thing, if these come up a lot, if you're in a situation where you're in a lot, they all feel high stakes because maybe you're just not in a culture that's like super conducive to like feeling okay. Think about ways to complete the stress cycle. So if you're on my mailing list, I sent out a list of like 100 of them last week. And but like, or just Google, but there's so many different ways to complete the stress cycle. But make sure that you're not just like, oh, I get out of that meeting, I've removed the stressor, because the stress is still there. And then it just comes back the next time you're in that situation. It's not resolved. You need to get it out of your body so that you can go in clean each time that you're dealing with these things. And it's just better for your health, mentally and physically. Okay. So those are the 2 questions for today.